So, hello everyone, this is Tyrion here with a guide on how to play Hakeem Mill. This is one of the uh, pretty much top tier decks in the game right now since the Five Towers expansion. It got nothing too great from the new expansion, although it is still very strong against all of these rush decks, and it's also conveniently strong against some of the control decks as well. So a lot of people are curious how to play this deck, so hopefully I can go over that today and make sense of it all. So first thing I'm going to do is go over one example deck, and this is pretty much as plain as it gets. This was submitted on mmdocking.com. You can go there and check out all sorts of guides, decks, and everything else, but in particular this Hakeem was sent in by a player named Stormstomp. Maybe not one of the most well-known players, but right here we see that this is a pretty much standard build for most Hakeem players, and I'll point out to you the key cards that make this deck work. The first one here is going to be the creature, the Void Shade. If we look at him here, when he enters or leaves the battleground, you put the top 3 cards of opponent's library in their graveyard. This is an amazing feature for the entire mill style of the deck. And if you're not familiar with what a mill does, it is exactly this. You're taking cards from your opponent's deck and discarding them before they get a chance to use them. So the entire idea of this deck is to completely eliminate your opponent's deck before they can actually kill you. So we'll get into exactly how that functions. Void Shade is probably the most key component of the entire deck. We see it as nice and low requirements here, and a bonus is that it's anchored, which is absolutely incredible in conjunction with some of the other cards in this deck, which will be the Throne of Renewal, which is one of the second most crucial cards in the deck here. You see the Throne of Renewal returns every card on the battleground to their owner's hand. You also lose all resources, but that's not really so much of a problem. This is just an amazing card for slowing down the game. If your opponent has any creatures on the battlefield, they will all be sent back to his hand, and you won't be taking any damage this turn. Very crucial card in order to prevent yourself from taking too much damage and dying before you're able to complete the milling. Now, the next key component of this card is another fortune, and by this card I mean the deck. It's going to be Void Tainted Ritual, and this is a fortune that allows you to draw a card for 2 cost, which is already fairly decent, but in addition to that, whenever you play a magic creature, you put the top 3 cards of your opponent's library into their graveyard. So you can just imagine if you play something like this, nearly all of the creatures in the deck are magic, and there aren't that many, honestly. There's only 11 magic creatures here, but if you're able to play even 2 of these creatures, you're milling 6 cards already, and there's a chance you're already milling an additional 3 here, so this card works very, very well to combo, and you can discard a lot of cards in a single turn by using Void Tainted Rituals. And a lot of these other cards make sense. You have Insect Swarm and Earthquake, which are crucial cards to help clear the board, especially using them with Crystal of Power to deal double damage. You have Stone Shields to buy yourself more time. You have Cosmic Realignment, because this is one of the greatest mill cards. It forces your opponent to draw 5 new cards. And then some other stuff thrown in here that sort of all contributes to the whole combo. So another key aspect is the event Celebrations. So on top of using all of these cards to help you mill, you can also use Celebrations to force your opponent to draw a card, and the more your opponent draws, the closer they are to running out of cards in their deck. So I will just highlight some of the key factors in what makes this deck works. The first one is milling, and this happens through playing Void Wraiths, playing fortunes like Void Tainted Ritual, and using events like Celebrations. This is the key component to making this deck work. So this is your primary objective when playing the Hakeem Mill deck. Your second objective is stalling enemy damage. So whenever your opponent plays creatures, you are blocking them with your own creatures when possible. You have some nice tanky, high HP creatures that are very capable of doing that. And then you're also using Altar of Shadows to prevent them from attacking, and Stone Shield to prevent your hero from taking damage. So that should be your secondary objective whenever you're playing. And finally, your third objective is clearing the board. So whenever you can't, like mill, you can't stall enemy damage, or you're about to take a whole bunch of damage, Just use spells, often combined with Crystal Power for extra damage, or use Throne and send all of those enemy creatures back off the board and avoid taking damage, because it's very, very easy to be surprised by Quick Attack, which is why I use spells like Earth's Grasp, but clearing the board is one of the most important components of the deck. Additionally, when you are killing off creatures, that's sending more cards to the graveyard, which is your main objective anyways. So now I'm going to go ahead and go into a replay here, and in this replay we will see Storm Stomp playing that exact deck that I went over earlier, and he will be playing against a well-known player called Hachikov, who is also a member of the Mulligan Squad. You can feel free to check him out if you enjoyed this video. You can see Hachikov at twitch.tv/ yeah, his name is going to be really hard to spell, but you'll see it when we get into the game here. Yeah, Void Shades. Whenever I say Void Rays, I mean Void Shades, of course. But here we are going into the game. Void Shade is very different from Void Wraith, and you can see why. You guys read the text, you understand what's going on. But anyways, here we are. Storm Stomp coming into the game has a pretty good starting hand. It's always nice when you can start with an Altar of Shadows and a Stone Shield, and especially having a Void Shade in hand and a 2-cost blocker as well. He has an option for every single turn. And we'll see on his first turn he decides to just use Celebrations. He doesn't really care enough to block that 1 damage with anything, so he just forces his opponent to start drawing cards already. Now Hachikov was able to play a second creature on this turn, so Storm Stomp will probably opt to try to block some of this damage, and he does so with one of his Void Shades like that, already milling Hachikov down to 36 cards. So we see already there's an 11 card difference between the two decks, and it's only been 3 turns, and only 1 Void Shade has been played. Hachikov will be clearing out this blocker, and now he has a damage presence of 5 on the board. So we'll see Storm Stomp use one of his Altars of Shadow, which will stop all of these creatures from being able to attack, so he'll remain at 18 health for this whole turn. Meanwhile, in his hand he has drawn a Throne of Power, which is crucial, and now with 5 resources he will just play another Altar, stalling his opponent yet one more turn, leveling up his magic to give him a chance to start playing this Stone Shield. And Hachikov will be tempted to play some more creatures. The more damage you have on the board against a deck like this, usually the better off you are, but you also don't want to go too far in just in case there's something like a Crystal of Power and then an Insect Swarm. But we see the Throne came down to send all those creatures back, so Storm Stomp still 6 turns in, has absolutely no threats on the board, so he's doing a good job of keeping the board clear. Hasn't quite been able to mill that hard, but we still see Hachikov is only at 30 cards here. Plays his Atropos just to give him a high health creature, and while he did take out only Magic Peddlers from the graveyard, he ends up dealing 2 damage to himself with Week of Austerity, but doesn't really matter all that much. Storm Stomp here now has 2 more Void Shades in his hand. He also has 2 Stone Shields, so he's in pretty good shape. And with combo here of 2 Void Tainted Rituals and these 2 creatures, he mills Hachikov all the way down to 15 cards already on just 7 turns. So already, just with that one massive turn, Hachikov will be dealing 3 damage from Atropos and killing off this blocker, but he's in a pretty precarious position already. He needs to deal 14 more damage to his opponent here, and he only has these cards in his hand and 11 more cards in his deck to do it. So from here on forward, Storm Stomp will be doing whatever he can to avoid taking this damage, clearing the board, and with another Void Shade coming down, that's going to bring Hachikov down to 8 more cards remaining in his deck. Another interesting card that combos well with the entire mill process is Offering to the Void, which banishes all the cards from the graveyard. And additionally, it gives him extra resources. For every card in the graveyard, you get 1/2 resource, rounded down. And Hachikov will be taking out this Stone Shield, still dealing 0 damage, but he does have a lot of damage presence on the board now. So it's pretty important that Storm Stomp will use something to slow this down, and he draws an Altar of Shadows, which is quite nice. Hachikov, being Adar Malik, can't do anything about that. He will just continue to load up the board with as much as he can, hoping that Storm Stomp won't have an answer, but he's drawn his cards in the perfect order this game, and he has a Throne of Renewal here, he has another Stone Shield, and he'll be able to hold out for quite some time. Meanwhile, Hachikov down to 3 cards in his deck, and poor Adar Malik doesn't have too many options to deal with Hakeem Mill. And we see now one of the other crucial cards, Earth's Grasp, coming down along with the Stone Shield, so again he's not taking any damage. And additionally, this Earth's Grasp will prevent Adar Malik from using one of his best components of the deck, which is POW Deathseekers, along with Shadow Images, which all rely on Quick Attack. Earth's Grasp, of course, denies Quick Attack, makes it so that is not even a possibility. And Storm Stomp now doing some spells to clear out most of the creatures. Obviously, Earthquakes do not hit these Vampire Knights down here, but with one well-placed Cosmic Realignment, Hachikov now has only a single card in his hand, no cards in his deck, and he will be playing a Tropos, bringing 2 cards back out of the graveyard to give him a little bit of a chance. And this is one of the good things about Adar Malik, is that he can sort of answer a little bit to all of these shenanigans that Hakeem Mill can do. The fact that he can recycle a Tropos means that he continually get more creatures on the board. But unfortunately for Hachikov, there are so many blockers coming out that I don't think it's going to matter. There is obviously 2 cards in the hand of Storm Stomp which are actually not of any use to him right now, so Memory Lapse is one of the new cards from 5 Towers that some people have tried to test with. It's a little bit interesting. It is a recurring fortune. You can continue to play this multiple times throughout the game, because as soon as you discard it when you play a creature, it'll come back to your hand. So that is one interesting aspect, but in the case of your opponent already having 0 cards in their deck, it doesn't actually help you at all. And Arcane Intuition additionally picks a card out of your opponent's deck unless you use it. But we see here Hachikov, who is down to a single card in hand, has played a Tropos a few times now, and now has 3 creatures on the board, 3 more creatures in hand. But unfortunately, another Stone Shield from Storm Stomp, and Hachikov can only play his Vampire Knights, remove the Stone Shield, and wait. So that was a very, very quick mill. Oftentimes you won't see an enemy run out of cards so quickly, but if you're able to combo Void Tainted Ritual and Void Shades so quickly like that, then all of a sudden massive cards just get removed from your opponent's hand and library, and it's just incredible. So that's the end of the game, and that is a perfect example of making Hakeem Mill work. Obviously that was a favorable matchup for him. Adar Malik doesn't have a lot of the answers that some other decks might, but regardless, you get the idea of how the deck is played. So hopefully I explained everything well enough for you guys to use this knowledge to try to make this deck work on your own. Remember to try to get those key cards that I highlighted and experiment with it and see if you can't make some tweaks to it on your own and make it work for you. So thanks again everyone for watching, and good luck.